So if you're asking yourself this question seriously, then it most likely means no, you shouldn't keep all your answers within 2 minutes. The reason why I'm saying this is because this advice usually applies for people that are really good at behavioral interviewing and usually applying for more senior roles. So if you're not applying for senior roles, no, your answer should not necessarily be within 2 minutes. Now, what makes a great answer, especially to a behavioral question? The number one thing that matters for a behavioral answer to be a great one is the story. The quality of the story is the main predictor of a great answer, essentially. The second most important element in giving an answer is the way you communicate it, the clarity of thought. And clarity of thought sometimes means the opposite of the 2 minutes threshold. It means you should take your time, even spend 5 minutes if you deem this worthwhile. But you should communicate it. You should communicate your story in a compelling way. Number 3 here on important elements of a great answer is to be specific and to present information in a quantifiable way. Like, for example, if you present an answer in a star format, ensure that you give your context, give your answer a little bit of context in the situation. You put it in a timeline if it's a project, or you at least say, hey, this happened 6 months ago. How big was your team? What was your role involved? And how did the project evolve? And especially for the results, you would want to quantify those results. But don't just throw in there any metrics, but try to quantify them in a good way. So this would be the third element of a great answer. And finally, the fourth that I would recommend is also to ideally make them concise, within 1.5 to 2 minutes long. So again, like I said in the beginning of on this video, for junior roles and for people who are not particularly skilled at behavioral interviewing and are not supposed to be particularly skilled with these things, this 2 minutes threshold is very blurry. So don't take it too seriously. Now, there are also some other exceptions where this 2 minutes rule is more negotiable of a scenario. This happens especially when you're giving an answer that requires you to explain a technical concept, something complex, that it's not humanly possible to explain within those 2 minutes and to have a proper star answer. This is a well-known scenario where you should take your time to explain and to communicate the idea that you want to transmit. The other scenario where I found this 2 minutes rule to be less efficient is during phone interviews, because during phone interviews you usually don't have a lot of time to prepare for these, and instead of preparing a poorly crafted answer that you would try to push within 1.5 to 2 minutes, you'd rather want the interviewer to stop you or to tell you, hey, get to the point, as to giving a poor answer that would disqualify you even without you knowing it. And by the way, if the interviewer tells you get to the point, that's not necessarily a disqualifier for an interview. I would say that maybe they're interested in your application so much that they want to extract as much information as possible, so they make an informed decision here. So these would be the main elements of a great answer, and what I know from my experience about keeping your answers concise. And last but not least, if you are seriously considering this as a constraint, this 2 minutes rule as a serious constraint, it also might be because you're too analytic in your thinking and you have too much of an analytic thinking over behavioral interviewing, which behavioral interviewing is actually all about narratives, narrative formats. And actually, in the case of Amazon, they realized that, hey, not many people, not all people that are, especially the technical ones, are skilled in behavioral interviewing, so we should find some workarounds on this. So that's why probably they introduced the written assignments as a secondary method to communicate the idea that you want to transmit in a non-verbal way, that it's supposed to be easier, right, and still would give an idea on your abilities to communicate. And yeah, just one last note here. I found that people with a background in investment banking and banking in general tend to do very well with these things. So probably also that it's due to this orientation within Amazon. Jeff Bezos used to be an investment banker, that also this hiring technique is also particularly efficient, this one. But I wouldn't single out Amazon for this, because behavioral interviewing is a very successful hiring technique. And actually other companies are nowadays picking up with Amazon on this hiring trend. So behavioral interviewing is really important, but you should really understand the quality of the story is ultimately the best predictor of success in a behavioral interview.